Rabbi J. Rosenbaum, who I see has just entered, Gary and Meredith Krupp, our older brother and sister in the faith, in the Jewish faith, my dear friends, some of you I know, some of you who I do not know. Listen carefully to the words spoken by Pope Francis just 1 year ago. The threat of anti-Semitism is still lurking. Yes, even here in Long Island. Pope Francis continued, "This is a fuse that must not be allowed to burn. And the best way to defuse it is to work together positively and to promote fraternity." Pope Francis was echoing what has been pronounced by the Church for centuries. All Christians are spiritually Jews, says Vatican II. I quote, "Who meets Jesus Christ meets Judaism. The spiritual legacy of Israel is a living legacy that must be understood and treasured in its profundity and in its richness." For St. John Paul II, and I quote, "Anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism are sins. Jesus was and always remained a Jew. Christians deepen their own faith when they learn from the living faith of Jews. Dialogue is needed." Pope Benedict XVI quotes the words of Pope Pius XI. "Spiritually, we are Semites. The Church, therefore, is opposed to every form of anti-Semitism which can never be theologically justified. The Catholic Church is close and a friend to you," says Pope Francis. "Yes, we love you, and we cannot but love you because of the fathers, our elders in the faith. Through them you are very dear and beloved brothers to us." And just listen again to yesterday's second reading at Mass from St. Paul's letter to the Romans. "These are the Israelites," St. Paul said. "There's the adoption, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, the worship and the promises. There's the patriarchs, and from them, according to the flesh, is the Christ." Why do I say this? Not by chance, this very day, the Church keeps the memorial of Saint Maximilian Kolbe. The 47-year-old Franciscan conventual priest was arrested in February 1941 on charges of aiding Jews and was imprisoned in Warsaw. He was deported to the death camp of Auschwitz, where he was stripped of his Franciscan habit and assigned prisoner number 16670. Father Kolbe was forced into the most humiliating jobs, such as carrying dead bodies, largely of the Jews, to the crematorium. Things took a dramatic turn on the 29th of July 1941, when Zygmunt Pilowski, a prisoner, escaped from Auschwitz. In retaliation, the Nazi deputy camp commander picked up 10 men to be starved to death in an underground bunker to deter further escapes. When one of the selected men, Francisques Gajovickis, 41 years of age, cried out, "My wife, my children," Father Kolbe volunteered to die in his place. Father Kolbe said this: "I am a Catholic priest. Let me take the place of my Jewish brother. I am old. He has a wife and children." The Nazi commander allowed the exchange. Father Maximilian Kolbe lived for another 15 days in a starvation bunker, without food and water, enduring beatings and torments at the hand of the SS guards. Despite this ongoing anguish, Father Kolbe led the prisoners in praying and singing hymns, often on his knees. The Nazi prison authorities wanted the bunker emptied, so they made short work of the Catholic priest on August the 14th, 1941, with a lethal injection of carbolic acid. Father Kolbe is said to have raised his left arm and calmly waited for the injection. Before dying, on the eve of the greatest of Marian feasts, Mary's Assumption into heaven, which we celebrate tomorrow, Father Kolbe pronounced his last words: "Ave Maria, Hail Mary." All this happened in the concentration camp in Auschwitz, where during the last war, some 4 million people were put to death. We cannot remain indifferent to this. Father Kolbe says indifferentism to the suffering of others is worse than a pandemic. As an entire race, the Jewish race was almost wiped off the face of the earth. 6 million were exterminated. That is the equivalent of murdering 1.2 billion Christians. Amidst this senseless, ruthless slaughter of the innocent, even in our own age, which begins in the womb of a mother through abortion, there is good news. I have traveled from the city of peace, Assisi in Italy, where I live and work, to bestow in these days a knighthood given directly by Pope Francis of the Pontifical Equestrian Order of Pope St. Gregory the Great to a brother of the Jewish faith, Elliot Hirschberg, one of only 9 Jewish brothers and 1 Jewish sister who sits here, who have ever received such an award in the history of the world. Can you imagine? Elliot is the chairman of Pave the Way Foundation, whose president and founders live and work in Wantagh, Long Island, to initiate gestures, to build trust, and to remove obstacles between all religions. Gary and Mary, Jewish brother and sister, who have received this knighthood, one of only 10, and 1 woman, Mary, in the whole history of the church, are with us today. Please give them an applause. Let me leave you finally with the words of St. Maximilian Kolbe, spoken in the face of the fury and hatred of Nazi persecution. I quote Father Kolbe: "Hatred is not a creative force, only love is." Father Kolbe saw in the Jewish souls created by God. He prayed for them continually, and he sought to help whoever was in need. His life, through a lethal injection, might seem to have been a defeat, But it is precisely in his self-giving to the end, for a father in need, regardless of race or creed, that the brightness of the love of Jesus to the end on the cross, which dispels the gloom of selfishness and hatred in this world, shines forth brightly. Wherever you are, whoever God has placed next to you, in your family, in your workplace, in your neighborhood, or in your school, ponder well these words from Father Saint Maximilian Kolbe, for he says the same to you and to me today in the concrete situation we are living in. Family, workplace, neighborhood, school. Hatred is never a creative force. Only love is.
I am Monsignor Anthony Figueiredo, Director of International Relations, on behalf of Archbishop Domenico Sorrentino of the Diocese of Assisi, Nocera Umbra, Gualdo Tadino in Italy. Welcome to the Museum of Memory, Assisi 1943 to 1944. What you are about to witness is a reproduction of select exhibits from the permanent museum that's located in Assisi. Courtesy of DeSales Media Group and the Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn, we bring the museum to you. Curated by Dr. Marina Rosati, the museum tells the fascinating story of the rescue of over 300 of our Jewish brothers and sisters in Assisi towards the end of the Holocaust and World War II. The video you are about to watch was recorded while the traveling exhibition was on display at St. John's University in New York City in 2022.
So this is the first panel. It's an introduction panel looking at those years, 1943 to 1944, where at the beginning of September, the 8th of September, the day of armistice, when some 4,000 Jews arrived into Assisi, which was almost the entire population of Assisi itself. So amongst this big group, there were 300 Jews, and a particular committee was set up by the Bishop Niccolini, in order to assist these brothers and sisters of ours. So here you see a little bit the history and the geography of Italy at that time, when by the Gustav line, Italy was split into two. So on the lower level, you had one republic, and on the upper level, again, a second republic, the Fascist Republic. And so one might ask, why did so many arrive into Assisi in a very dangerous period of history? And Don Aldo Brunacci would give the answer. They were looking for refuge in the person of St. Francis of Assisi. And so Don Aldo Brunacci was very significant, a protagonist in this history. He was the secretary of Bishop Niccolini, who organized this committee to take care of those who had been spread, had come to Assisi. And the point is that a letter had been received by the bishop from the Holy See, from Pope Pius XII, asking that these Jews would be given refuge and assistance in this difficult, dangerous time. And so you see here some photos of Don Aldo Brunacci. He is planting a tree, Yad Vashem, in Jerusalem, also coming to the United States at the House of Representatives, and also with two Jewish survivors here in the lower pictures. So Don Aldo is one of the just of the nations. We see here he received a letter from Steven Spielberg. Also to remember that he was actually arrested because of the dangerous, risky work he undertook saving the Jews. So here, very significant, we see the main leader, the one who welcomed the Jews, who took on this initiative himself, the bishop, Monsignor Giuseppe Placido Nicolini. The bishop, Bishop Nicolini, was Bishop of Assisi for some 50 years, a very long period. So he was particularly loved, a real fatherly figure, but took great risks. Imagine that he hid the Jewish people in his own residence, and particularly some of their objects, walling them up and hiding these precious objects of the Jewish people in his own residence, walling them up during the night time. Need to remember, the bishop is also one of the just of the nations, just as Don Aldo Brunacci. And here we see him in a photo with Gino Bartali, a very famous cyclist in Italy. This photo was taken 1938, so we're talking years before the Holocaust. And here we see how he used to visit the Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi and the monastery itself. He had a great interest, a great love for St. Francis. So here we see Gino Bartali, the cyclist, so famous, but in his own private chapel, which was given to him by the Cardinal of Florence. And so it is that he had his own private space to pray, a real man of faith. There was a great collaboration that took place between Cardinal Elia della Costa, who was the Archbishop of Florence, and Bishop Nicolini. And so this concession to have his own private chapel was very significant, because Bartali was asked to pedal for salvation by carrying in his bike, pedaling all those miles between Assisi and Florence, documents which had been forged and then placed in the pipes of his bicycle and then carried from one place to another secretly. And who was it then who printed these false documents which hid the real identity of our Jewish brothers and sisters? Luigi and Trento Brisi, who had a printing press in the center of Assisi, Luigi the father and Trento the son. So Luigi and Trento, they entered this clandestine organization to protect, to save the Jewish people, and they actually printed these documents during the day as they printed other documents, so they were fully exposed to all the risks. They took great risks printing these documents to save the Jews. 1997, Luigi and Trento are recognized amongst the just of the nations by testimonies that these two men contributed in saving the Jews. They are from Assisi, and so they gave their lives to save their Jewish brothers and sisters. So we see here the actual certificates recognizing Luigi and Trento Brisi as the just of the nations, but we also see a recognition from the printing organization here in the United States, the National Printing Organization, recognizing what they did in their printing press to save their Jewish brothers and sisters. As we are seeing, there are many different figures in Assisi who are involved in this clandestine organization, and a very important group are the conventual friars of the Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi. That was the first stop for the Jewish people, the other refugees, to come to Assisi, and so the friars played a very significant role in salvation. One of these friars, Brother Michael Todd, we see here a parchment from the Jews themselves with their signatures indicating how much he helped to save them through this difficult period. And another figure from the conventual friars was the actual Minister General. His name was Father Bed Hess, American, and he was extremely significant in allowing Assisi to be called a hospital city, which meant that it was saved from the bombs of the attackers. Here we see some of the actual places that the Jews were hidden and given refuge. All of them were cloistered convents: San Quirico, Santa Croce, and San Colette. What actually happened, remember, these were cloistered convents, so no one could enter them. And the Bishop Niccolini, asked the superiors of these convents to take the Jews in because no one could gain access. But we do see in these last images of the convent of San Quirico the bunkers, because on at least 3 different occasions the Nazis attempted to enter San Quirico, but in these bunkers the Jews were hidden and saved. And here in this image you see the Mother Superior of San Quirico. She too in the year 2013 was recognized just amongst the nations by Yad Vashem. And so here in these images we see the communities of San Colette and San Quirico, the Mother Superiors. They tried to keep the sense of their religious communities because some knew that Jews were there, some did not know that Jews were there. This was a real clandestine organization to save the Jews. How did they live? They needed to eat, they needed to dress, and here we have Brother Nicacci, who actually went out to get the material, the food, the other items that the Jews needed to live on. We see here the convent of San Damiano, one of the most famous in Assisi, where this operation took place. Brother Rufino Nicacci was recognized as well as one of the just of the nations by Yad Vashem. We see this in the image here. It may seem very strange, this history of Assisi, because we have 2 figures who were part of this salvific operation: Fortini, who was a fascist, and Muller, who was the captain of the German troops. So we see Fortini, a fascist, but we have the witness of the Viterbi family, we actually have it written here, who say they revealed their identity to Fortini, and he never gave that away. He protected their identity as Jews in order to save them. He arrested Fortini when the Allies arrived in Assisi. 1944 he was arrested. But why was he liberated? Exactly because of this testimony, these letters, which showed that he saved the Jews from a catastrophe. Remember that now we turn to Muller. He was the captain of the German troops, but he was also a very good Catholic, a great friend of Bishop Niccolini. And there are testimonials from the people of Assisi, the Jews as well, that showed how he knew who they were, but again did everything to protect them. Quite amazing. We see this captain of the German armies who afterwards when he returned to the city, a street is named after him, a great plaque is raised in his honor. All of this happens in Assisi, a real change of history, the captain of the German troops and the fascist mayor. And so here we have some testimonials, particularly from the Baruch family who arrived from Croatia, which actually show how Assisi saved them from the Nazi atrocities. So this family, the Baruch family, they had to move between two convents. Their identity was actually changed from Baruch to Bartoli, and then they moved to another city of Italy where they were able to receive refuge. That city had been liberated by the Allies, and because of the false identities given to them with the help of the people of Assisi, they were able to be saved. So we see this Viterbi family who actually came from Padua, Jewish, but they were given false identity cards which showed that they were a family who came from Lecce. Identities were forged in order to save them because of their Jewish names. And so in our museum we try to hold on to this memory of the great work of Assisi to save 300 Jewish brothers and sisters. In other parts of Italy they came to Assisi, but beyond the borders of Assisi, Zagreb and France, to show how in the darkest years Assisi became a light to save the Jews from the Nazi Holocaust. For this great page in history of welcoming the Jewish brothers and sisters, 2004, the Italian President Ciampi gave the entire city of Assisi the gold medal for their saving action. During the Second World War, many Jews came to Assisi to seek refuge, with the Franciscan community being there. And in the residence of the then Archbishop Niccolini, about 400 Jews were saved in his residence and in cloistered convents around the city. But what was really important was the collaboration that grew between the church, the German commander of the army, and the fascist mayor. And what was happening in Assisi was actually happening throughout the world, in places like Vienna, even Haiti. In fact, in that period, the Holy See, Pope Pius XII, saved 890,000 Jews. That would be 27% of the Jewish population today. And we want to bring that message to the schools of Long Island through the Museum of Memory that records this magnificent event. You know, the Lutheran pastor Dietrich Bonhoeffer tells us that not to act is to act, not to speak is to speak, and God will not hold us guiltless. We're in a time of religious persecution, anti-Semitism, and we need to get that message out today. What is happening in terms of persecution to the Jews today will be happening to other minorities tomorrow. I think that's the real danger today. We shut our eyes to evil that is around us, that is taking hold of us, and we become indifferent. And we need to overcome evil with good. There is good happening. We see that in Assisi through the saving of Jews. The Museum of Memory records that, something tangible. That's the message we need to get to young people today, because very often we are hopeless and say there's no answer, you know, to the Ukraine war or to despotism or any kind of indifference. There is an answer, concrete people who have really saved others through courageous, heroic acts. And I think young people will really want to rise to that. And we're going to give them a challenge, and I can tell you, they will respond to that here in Long Island.